Go ahead and get into the teaching. Are you ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Sex and the Soul. I am your host, Dr. Suzanne Howard, apostle, doing the work of the Lord, delivering souls and sanctifying lives for the betterment and enrichment, because we were told in our Constitution, the Bible, that we are not only to have life, but we are to have abundant life. And I'm bringing this healing and deliverance over the airways since January 2017, trying to teach us that we are in a flesh, we are in an earthen vessel, we have a soul, but we are a spirit. And the one place we all have in common, the one place where God is no respecter of person, is our soul. Our soul is neither male or female. Our soul is the breath of life that God breathed into us that caused us to be human beings. So then he had dirt. He created dirt into a human flesh. Our spirit is who we are. It's the essence, but our soul is the pit of who we are. It is the core. It is the mainframe. The soul never, ever forgets. Your soul remembers everything you went through, good, bad, or indifferent. I know we think we remember it all, but believe me, there's a consciousness and an unconsciousness. And a lot of what we have experienced in life has gone to our unconsciousness. And that's a safe place. That's a place that God has given us to protect us from losing our minds. It's a place to keep us from being fractured in our egos. It's a safety mechanism that God has given us to preserve the wealth of our well-being. It's important, but there's some things in our soul that we need to go and get, and we need to erase the tape. We need to change the accuracy of the memory. We need to bring truth to what we experience. We need to confront so that we may conquer. And that's my job. Thank you for being the participants here tonight as we begin our teaching of power in relationships for sex in the soul. God bless you and welcome on. Please send in your emails at info, not info, info at SuzanneMHoward.com. Your emails bless me. They encourage me. They even challenge me. I pray for you, your marriages, your relationship. I didn't realize how many people were having sexual problems. I didn't realize how many sex addicts that we have that are in very important places in life and in the church. And they're suffering, and it has to be kept secret because no one wants to deal with sex. We don't want to deal with it in the household. We don't want to deal with it in the churches. We don't want to deal with it in relationships. We just want it, but no one wants to deal with the issues, the dynamics of sex. I was blessed to have dinner tonight with about 4 wonderful women. We were talking, I'll be at one point, one day, I will be heading to the change of life. And I was saying how, I really don't know what to expect. I hear different stories, but why aren't women more open to share on what they're going through? Everyone's experience will be different. I don't believe I'm going to go through it at all. That's just something I proclaimed when I became a new citizen in the kingdom of God. But at one day, I'm going to reach that point, whether I have the affects, the manifestations of it or not. But we were talking about, why don't women talk to the younger women, explain to us what is this change of life that's going to happen to our body? What will we experience? Why didn't anyone talk to me and to prepare me for marriage, at what a man will want? And why didn't anyone talk to me as a young girl of how powerful sex is? How much of a commodity sex is, how it should be valued and cherished and kept as pearls in an alabaster box, until I met someone who was willing to see me for who I am, not what I was displaying to him, and can appreciate that I was giving him the essence of who I am. Where were the older women that were supposed to teach us that? Where were the women that were supposed to teach us about menstruation and tampons and Kotex? Where were they at? Where were the women that told us how we would have to keep ourselves clean? And where were these talks at? Why are women so private? We go into the bathroom together in droves, but yet we have no conversation about the things of being female. And that it's hurting us, and it's hurting us generation after generation after generation. Every time my granddaughter comes home, we talk and we, do our little girl thing, and we play, and I tease her and I'll tickle her and I do all that stuff. And then somewhere before bedtime, everything went okay today? Did anybody make you feel uncomfortable? And she'll share her, little simple things where somebody may have felt her uncomfortable. And then I'll say, did anybody touch you today? You don't ever have to worry about anyone telling you that they're going to hurt me or anybody if they touched you. We have to have these conversations with our young girls and our young boys, because we are repeating pain and trauma generation to generation, because for some reason we've kept a secret, and we kept a secret about sex and sexuality. So trauma and abuses and pedophiles and molesters and incest has been able to grow and multiply and continue in our bloodline and become a part of our legacy, because no one's having the conversation that is necessary to have. So we end up dealing with pain and trauma instead of having the proper preparation so that we can prepare, we can be a preventative measure so that the worst does not happen. Women, we have to do better with talking about life with one another. We have to do better with talking about marriages that hit rough seasons. We have to do better at talking about preparing women for marriage, because we go into marriage with the absolutely wrong reasons. We're very selfish in marriage. We talked last week about how marriage will test us in our selfishness. We talked about how growing up and indulging in multiple sexual relationships will cause some of us to grow up and want a safe man. And for a man, the same thing, a safe woman, not really the one you want or that you would choose had your soul not suffered what it had suffered through. So we're choosing out of pain and error and mistake, instead of choosing the mate that God has given us the authority to choose. We've got a lot of work to do, a lot of reconnecting to do with the former and the senior generations. There's knowledge that's being withheld from us, and we need that information so that we can change the legacy of our lives and the lives of those that we are multiplying, procreating, and yet responsible for. So welcome tonight to Power in Relationships with Sex in the Soul. I want to make two quotes for you first. The first one is from Philip Yancey, and his quote is, "Love that is real can always be refused." And then a quote from the Temptations, "And I'm going to make you love me. Oh, yes, I will. Yes, I will." Let me give you a story. I want to start out with a story tonight on Chris. Let me indulge you. Come with me. In her mid-20s now, Chris looks back at her first real boyfriend in college and realizes the significance of that relationship. She had managed to ignore guys through high school. Her grades, she had kept her grades high to get in the school she wanted. But Chris, to her credit, worked very hard, but ignored some other deficiencies in her life. Lars appeared in a text message in the spring of her freshman year. He'd gone to the trouble to get her number from a friend. They started getting coffee after chemistry class together. He was the perfect antidote to her small town, small world background. As a military kid, he lived in half a dozen countries, all these places he wanted to take her. Chris began to like him more than she was prepared to like any guy. The parties he took her to weren't exactly where she would have picked to go, but a glass of wine gave her some distance from the craziness that she was living in. And the wine also made it easier before long to sleep with Lars. She liked the guy, to be sure, but she hadn't set out to sleep with him. She looks back on the next 6 months as some times of the most happiest times of her life. For the first time ever, she almost forgot her parents, their divorce, and her father's new family with another woman. Everything save Lars faded into a gray. silent background. She liked it better that way. In the pit of her stomach, though, she knew this couldn't last. There was too much life in front of them. By the next spring, under the same budding trees and bursting azaleas, they agreed to move on. It's just not right. The time is not right in our lives for a serious relationship. Friends, yes, so they would part and be friends. Chris kept drilling this mantra in her head over the next few months. Lars had been a decent first love. She would have loved others, surely, but the first time she saw Lars with another girl, laughing and flirting his head off, his arm gently slipping down the back and the waist of another woman, Chris had to duck into the nearest woman's bathroom. She thought she would throw up. What is that? Why does that happen to us? Why is there such a real, tangible feeling when you love someone, this pit in your stomach, this literal, I remember having a literal pain in my heart when my heart was broken. And I was at work talking to another coworker and I said, I just want this pain to go away. It's been 2 weeks and I want this pain to go away. I didn't even know why I had a physical pain from a relationship that I was in. I didn't understand the neurons and the chemicals that were released through bonding, and that in a woman, which is 6 times more neurons in a woman than it is for a man. So we are going to experience the pain and the hurt and the distance way more deeper, far harder than any man would ever go through. This is what she did, and she threw up. She couldn't escape the sense that she'd come out the loser. Young or not, she hadn't been enough of something to keep this guy. She'd been left behind before. It was all too frequent to her, too familiar to her. But this leaving behind that she recognized was by her dad. And she hated having those awful feelings again. So what did she do? Well, Chris looks back on her first love and the searing nature of that experience as the thing that greased the skids and made it easier to begin a life of sexual promiscuity, to have sex with other men. But from then on, she kept her heart out of the picture and she performed in relationships, but numb in her emotions. At last, she had learned that much. In the space of a few years, Chris went from one reluctant partner to another reluctant partner to aggressive female. Being with a guy sexually made her feel like an utterly desirable woman. For a little while, at least, she felt like a woman in control. She needed a constant stream of male attention, but she made sure she wasn't the one getting left behind anymore. Only now, Chris looks back and wonders where the girl she remembers went. Can I ask you that question tonight? Where is the girl that you remember? Where did she go? Where did you leave her? What set of sheets? What incidents? What pain? Where was the location? What was going on that day in the weather? What were you wearing? What was the pain you experienced when you lost the girl that you so remember and maybe still want to very much meet again? There's a slippery slope of seductiveness that leads us into a life we've never planned or intended when we try to avoid pain and hurt and enter into a life of disassociation sex. When we decide to have sex without romance, when we decide to have sex without marriage, when we decide to have sex without our heart, it's a disassociative pattern in our life. And we begin to play what we're titled tonight, power games. Come on, somebody put up on the screen for me tonight, power games. How easily the world of relationship between men and women devolve in this direction. Both parties end up competing to ensure they aren't the ones who get left in the dust, feeling like the fool. But there's a dark side to relationships when power is the driving force. And ultimately, the conversation leads to a rather breathtaking view of God. God has given you a beautiful body, women. I don't care the measurements. I don't care the size. He has given you a beautiful body. I know you think there are 10 things at least wrong with it. Some of us has worked very hard at appreciating our flaws. Even the commercials now are enlightening us to be comfortable with the stretch marks and the wounds from different surgeries and childbearing and everything that has gone on, from accidents to skin pigmentations, that even the world has now shifted to help us to understand and appreciate our bodies. But we all think there's at least something wrong with our bodies. I get it, but that doesn't change the reality. You are eminently desirable. You are eminently desirable in ways you have probably only slowly discovered in time. And in this body, each of you undergoes a transformation as dramatic as a woman to a butterfly. The gangly middle schoolgirl with braces, maybe, who sheds her old skin and emerges as a young woman. And guess what? Now guys begin to notice you big time. It is quite the rush to feel the power of being so attractive to a guy, isn't it? Do you remember that? But if the wonder of that power gets twisted, and having your heart broken will truly bring out the wonder part, then a subtle, dark influence often invades us. Listen, sexual attraction becomes a tool a woman uses to get what she thinks she wants. Innocent wonder can morph into sensitive, seductive power before you even know what happens. Let me read that again. Sex outside of marriage has a disturbing tendency to drift in the direction of power and manipulation. There is no convenient, no covenant, no transcendent meaning, no pledge of love through thick and thin. So then sexual attraction becomes the only power you have. The sexual power becomes a tool for you to get what you think you want. Sex outside of marriage has a disturbing tendency to drift and drift and drift in different directions of promiscuity, of power and manipulation. There is no covenant, no transcendent meaning, no pledge of love through thick and thin. There's not enough material on which to build a basis for love and respect. And so the lead weight of it all sinks us into sheer human selfishness. And that's pretty much what I see today with relationships. I'm not getting what I want. I'm not in love anymore. I want this and I want that. When this author, Kelly Cohen, wrote a memoir of the men she bedded, she explained how a particular mirage drove her. Somehow, if she could establish a sexual connection, this man would be hers. Let me read. There's no question in our minds that this is all it takes, luring a man into bed. Men are so easy that way. If they have sex with you, they can be yours. Even though this hasn't been the case in the past, I still believe it. It's written across every ad, every movie, every love song. Sex equals ownership. Isn't that exactly the illusion we are sold at every turn? Sex is supposed to be the path to belonging to someone deeply. Every movie says so. But as the reminder of Cohen's memoir reveals, not only did sex not make a man hers, she emerged in her late 20s feeling no different than she did as a teenager. She felt personally and emotionally stuck. I hear this every day. I hear it in relationship. I hear it in life. I hear it in spirituality. But since this teaching on sex and the soul, I hear it sexually with people. I am stuck emotionally in a loveless sexual relationship. In a culture with such broken sexual boundaries, the path of sexual seductiveness is an easy one to follow. One night when I couldn't sleep, I opened up an email, which is always a mistake at 3 o'clock in the morning. Trust me, but I get those often. And there on my screen was the story of a woman who had followed that path to a place where she was using sex for revenge. Come on, women, we're going to get free tonight, or we're going to keep it covered. You're going to open up that Pandora's box, or you're going to keep it covered. Her story is important to hear. Let me read. I am halfway through your book. I bought it in search of reasons why I have for so many years now used sex to get men. I've been through one marriage and lots of sexual driven relationships. Along the way, I got really hurt by a couple of men I really loved. So I learned how to use my body for revenge. I met a guy now and I tell him that I'm celibate, but that's a big lie. I put off sex for a number of reasons, and then I move on before the kill. When they start to have feelings for me, I back off big time. I feel hollow inside. The only time I feel alive really is when I am experiencing the power of pulling a guy in. I can make him fall for me, and I can hurt him so much in the process, I can even walk away and not feel a thing. But I'm scared now. Will I always feel this dead inside? Will I ever be able to trust anyone again? I want to feel something other than the darkness and void of my own soul. That's good. Isn't that good? We can be living this woman's story before we know it. When we learn the power of our attractiveness, we can take the power in some terrifically destructive directions. It's a temptation every human being faces. It's the dark side of the beauty a woman possesses. Notice how for Chris and the woman who wrote me anonymously, pain propelled them down some dark paths. I got really hurt by a couple of men I loved. Slowly, a quiet inner vow takes shape inside of each woman. I won't be the one who's left hurting this time. No way. She has to learn to use her body now like a tool to just get enough of what she wants. Or as Solomon describes the seductive woman in the book of Proverbs. Let me read. With her many persuasions, she entices him. With her flattering lips, she seduces him. Suddenly, her follows her. As an ox goes to the slaughter, as a bird hastens to the snare, so he does not know that it will cost him his life. The seductive use of sexual power is a strange thing. It burns both the lured and the lurer in nearly equal measures. A woman becomes as damaged as the man she seduces. Anybody out there with me tonight? Now, this is where the discussion of power and love gets really interesting. If you think about your close friends, you know you wouldn't ever have a friendship with another girl or a guy with another guy. You would never have another friendship based on power. It wouldn't survive, right? Manipulation usually kills even the simplest of human relationships. When it comes to love between a man and a woman, power and manipulation prove to be the kiss of death. When it comes to love between a man and a woman, power and manipulation is proven to be the kiss of death. Unless there's freedom, there's no trust. Unless there's freedom, there's no trust. Unless there's freedom, there is no trust. And without trust and freedom, you will never know love. How do you feel with that right there? Are there any manifestations going on in your body? Is there any nervousness, twitching, anything in your stomach, anything in your mind, any thoughts that are going through you right now with that one statement? Let me read it again. Because if this is an area that you believe you have insecurities in or fears in, your body is going to respond to that. Let me read it. Without trust and freedom, you will never know love. Do you have issues with trust? Because if you don't trust the person you are with, you or them are going to have no freedoms in that relationship. If there's no freedoms, there is no trust, so you really are not experiencing love. It takes covenant and commitment. You have to be vulnerable. You have to give someone every essence about you and trust that they won't use it against you. That's a scary thing. That's a humbling place to be. That's a real mature commitment to make. But how many of us think that we've made those commitments and never have once thought that unless there's freedom, there is no trust? And without trust and freedom, you will never know love. Are you ready for that? Are you really, really completely healed, delivered, and set free that you can trust an individual with your life and with their freedoms enough so that you can experience love again? If not, you've got some work to do. These are the laws of the relational universe. Relational universe. And we didn't invent them. This is the way that God loves us. He loves at great cost, and he doesn't force our hand or manipulate us into a loving relationship with him. Love that is real can always be refused. God turns power in relationships upside down. The one who created the world, who is the king of all kings, lays aside his power and comes to us in utter vulnerability of a baby and ultimately in a cruel death on the cross. He lays aside his power in order to love. Someone once said that if God told his love story as a parable, what would it sound like? Well, I have one that I'd like to read to you tonight. A king came to a village and fell in love with a maiden there. His dilemma was how to win her love. He knew that he could come with his banners flying and his army at his side. He could swoop her up on his back of his horse and carry her away. He had the power to do that in a matter of moments, but power does not win love. And the king was wise enough to know this. So what does the king do? He puts on the clothes of a beggar and comes to live in her village in order to win her love. The king has come to your village disguised as a beggar so that he can capture your heart with his love. That is the gospel. This story about the king is a close human analogy for what God has actually done in Jesus. It is the story the Bible tells. It is the word become flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory full of grace and truth. And I believe it goes on to say, and we knew him not. Rob Bell also writes, the story of the Bible tells is of a living being who loves and who continues to love even when that love is not returned. Are you ready for that? A God who refuses to override our freedom, who respects our power to decide whether to reciprocate. A God who lets us make the next move. So if you look at the blueprint of love and relationships, you find this same dynamic in place. The harder you try to manipulate love, the more it will elude you. When we love someone, we actually give them the power in the relationship. When we love someone, when we talk with the sign language, when we love someone, we actually give them the power in the relationship. We hand them a piece of our heart, taking the risk that they may not give it back. We surrender the desire to control the other person's response, manipulators. We surrender the desire to control the other person's response. Only if we do that do we have even a fighting chance at what love really is. That's just too much vulnerability. That's a lot. That's a lot. Who's teaching us that this is marriage? Who's teaching us that it's not always a give and take? Sometimes it's a give and a give and a give, and maybe get something back. But when it's love, let me read that line to you again. When we love someone, we actually give them the power in the relationship. Only if we do that do we have even a fighting chance at love. Human love must follow the blueprint of God's love in the surrender of power manipulators and the willingness to sacrifice yourself for another, or it ends up an aborted mess. It never looks and feels like love. Have you experienced that love before? Are you interested in that type of loving again? I've heard a lot of women tell me stories in counseling and stories at dinner and stories and email. Oh, they want that. I want that. I want it again. But what about what I just read? If you look at the blueprint of love and relationships, you're going to find a particular dynamic in place. The harder you try to manipulate love, the more it will elude you. When you love someone, you give them the power in the relationship. And when they love you back, they don't use that power as a weapon against you. They love you in return. You're in an abusive relationship right now and you think that it's a love relationship. No, it's not. Because you have surrendered your soul and your heart and everything that comes with you to them. And they're not reciprocating it. There's a love imbalance problem. Something is going on. And you can't make being the one who surrendered the power in the relationship an excuse for your emotional abuses, for you receiving physical abuses, for sexual abuses. And the abuses I'm talking about is just withholding it, withholding sex, withholding emotion, withholding reciprocation. That's an imbalance of love. Something's wrong. And when I counsel, I don't usually look at the abuser as much as I look at the one who's accepting it. What is it in you that causes you to see that as love? What is it in you that causes you to accept that in love? What is it in you that thinks that this is going to change when there's no work being done to work towards change? What is the hope that is keeping you in that relationship? Usually it's the validation and the acceptance of being with a man. And nothing change if nothing happens. You will never conquer that which you do not confront. You will never conquer that which you are too afraid to confront. It's better than being alone, right? Is it really? Have you tried being alone? Are you one of those that do not like being alone, but wonder why no one really wants to spend time with you? If you don't like being with yourself, if you are afraid to be with yourself, why would anybody else want to? Surrender the desire to manipulate. Surrender the desire to control. Do you know, if you read in Genesis, when all of the fall had happened and God was talking to man and woman and he was presenting them with the punishments for their actions, he said to the woman, your desire will always be for the man. And everyone thinks that that means we're always going to want a man. It doesn't. If you read it in the proper Hebrew teaching, her desire is always going to be to control the man. Women have a manipulation problem. The little girl in us that doesn't get what she wants, I see it already in my 8-year-old. Already, there's a manipulation. There's fake tears. There's a sickness. We're not feeling too good. Oh, I got an attitude with you. The manipulation starts early. Nobody's taught her how to manipulate. Nobody teaches us how to manipulate. And then the manipulator grows and finds out that she may not have beauty, she may not have power, she may not have wealth, but she has the golden key that people will live and die for. So she begins to manipulate through that, begins to distort her numbness and her attention and her emotional expressions of love to her partner. Instead, she wields her sex like, isn't this good enough for you? You have to surrender the desire to control. You have to surrender the desire to control the other person's response. You have to trust with freedoms and vulnerabilities. Human love must follow the blueprint of what God did in his surrendering to us. That woman who emailed me, she kept me awake and it resorted to using her body as a way to punish men, usually because she had given up the hope that she might actually be loved by anyone. The temptation to seduce a man in order to feel loved or powerful can only be cured by a greater love. If who I am as a woman, truly grounded in being loved by God first, then I am free to love in a radically new way. It's almost my time, I believe, but can we make that vow tonight? Hopefully I'll be able to finish this, but I just feel right there we need to pause for a moment. And I want you to say this with me. You don't have to raise your right hand, but if you do, come on, let's go for it. Let's raise our emojis. Let's lift our hand in our houses, in our cars, or our walk, wherever we are right now. And I want you to say this with me. If who I am as a woman is truly grounded in being loved by God, then, come on, put emphasis on then, I am free to love in a radically new way. The relational world opens up before me with a host of possibilities. It's okay if you don't love me. I can handle it if you don't want me, like me, or need me. It's really okay. I am outrageously loved woman. You are this woman who Jesus loves. The freedom that comes from this awareness makes real love at the right time with the right man such a beautiful possibility. It deserves a white dress all of its own, a room full of flowers, truly with guests and people that love you. Oh, the healing nature of sexuality and sexual relationship with the man you marry, having checked the power games at the door. Not searching for love and meaning in your life, but able to offer yourself out of this deep well of being a woman already loved. I'm sorry, but I got to say that again. Let me read my own stuff again. You are this woman who Jesus loves. The freedom that comes from this awareness makes real love at the right time with the right man such a beautiful possibility for you. It deserves a white dress, a room full of flowers, a room full of loved ones and friends. Truly, you deserve that. Oh, but the healing nature of a sexual relationship with the man you marry, having checked your power games at the door and his power games at the door, not searching for love and meaning in your life, but able to offer yourself out of this deep well of being a woman already loved. Then all the power that God has placed in sexual love is yours to the max. Let me read something else written by Rob Bell as I get ready to close. But sex is not the search for something that's missing. It's the expression of something that's been found. It's designed to be the overflow, the culmination of something that a man and a woman have found in each other. It's a celebration of this living, breathing thing that's happening between the two of them. Let me be ready to close on this. This will give us a picture of the healing that is possible in the goodness of love. This person's name is going to be Tess. Tess always wondered if there was a man out there who could handle her size. She was the daughter of a basketball coach, Amazonian in size. Her personality was as large as her person. She filled up a room with conversation as well as laughter. Tess dated a lot of men, but what might have been romance always turned into friendship. She was every guy's best girlfriend, but she was not the woman they would fall in love with. You ever been there? I hated that. When there's a guy I really wanted, I was telling one of my assistants the other day, I said, this one guy I really wanted, man, I was doing everything to show him that, I learned this in the last guy and I wasn't willing to do. And I learned this from the guy before that I wasn't willing to do. But this guy, I'm going to do it all because I've matriculated. I've learned a lot of things from a lot of wrong relationships. But this guy I want, so I'm going to offer it all. And when this brother had a nerve to tell me, I always feel like you're my refuge when I'm with you. And I'm smiling like, oh, that's so nice, but I ain't trying to be your refuge. I'm trying to be your woman, trying to be your mama. You're the one. You're charismatic. You're romantic. You're affectionate. You're loving. You're giving. You cook. You clean. You do the grocery shopping. You enjoy my cooking. You enjoy drives. And we can go to the bookstore together. We can read together. You go on trips. You're spontaneous. You're willing to move at random without all this planning. You don't ask a lot of questions. You like to get in the car and just lean the seat back and I can drive and we can listen to all kind of different music together. You're the one. I don't want to be your refuge. I want to be your woman. But he explained this safety he felt around me, the anointing of God. And I was so mad at the anointing that day. I'm like, any day you can go out of here and sit on a shelf, it would be today. I'm not trying to be his refuge. And he basically said what kept him always around me and always coming back to me was I was always the place of refuge. He felt so safe with me. I don't need you to feel safe with me. I feel just so vulnerable with you. All right, that's good. But can we build on that? But what he felt from me is not what I wanted. I don't care. Let somebody else be your refuge. I want to be your woman. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you're always some guy's best girlfriend, but she was not the woman they would fall in love with. You could trace part of the problem to an awful moment in high school when she was at her heaviest. Her father, listen to the father problems, y'all, that follow us. Father problems. Her father was known in the community for being a basketball coach, a great basketball coach. His children knew him for his drinking, though. One night, he was going to take Tess to help him scout an opposing team's defense, but he had a few too many already. When Tess came down the stairs, he took one look at her and said, "I'm not taking you to a basketball game. I'm ashamed to be seen with you." For Tess, no apology the next day could undo the damage of her father's words. The only male she had experience with, the only male that she had any closeness with, the only male that she ever knew how to be around. And these were the words from the first male image, the first male role model in her life. No apology the next day could undo the damage that her soul received. The last thing she wanted was to become some man's embarrassment. Now, she's not delivered. Time doesn't heal. It grows with her. So from that point on in her life, whenever she hung out with a guy, she made sure she walked 3 or 4 paces ahead of her. Give him a little breathing room. He won't want anyone to think that we're together. It wasn't the easiest way to carry on a conversation, but she managed to work it out. The summer, though, she turned 30, she met a guy at a youth camp where they both were counselors between her regular teaching jobs. He was a few years younger, but just as tall. By the end of June, he was finding excuses to help be around her and to help her and with her campers. Finally, he asked her out to dinner. Tess did her usual thing. She got out of the car and started walking